Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining. If anyone can do a quick thumbs up just to let us know that you can hear us. We had some audio challenges earlier. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we'll get started, and just like to welcome you to this Kinetic Skunk webinar. We will have some people joining as the call progresses. Today we're going to be talking about e-commerce, and specifically talking about the value or impact that you have with testing, with non-functional testing, performance testing, automated testing, continuous testing, and what that impact would be on customer experience, and also in ensuring that revenue through online shopping is guaranteed, or that it actually is materialized. That's the topic today, e-commerce site reliability, why automated and continuous testing helps ensure revenue and positive customer experience. So we're going to start with some introductions. I'll ask Donovan to do a quick intro on himself.
Hi, I'm Donovan, CEO of Kinetic Skunk. I've been in software quality since the mid-90s, so I've got a good understanding of the impact of inadequate quality in live environments, especially the economic impact.
Good. And I'm Mervyn George, facilitator for this session. I have decades of experience in software implementation and value engineering, and a lot of my focus right now is helping chiefs of companies to figure out how tech can future-proof their business. Maybe Donovan, a little bit about Kinetic Skunk. What's the focus? What's the niche? Where has it come from, and where is it at today?
Okay, Kinetic Skunk became a small business in 2015, focusing on automated testing. We started doing a bit of dabbling in the DevOps space, and we moved from there. We quickly moved into the DevOps space and started dabbling in infrastructure and so forth. But the large part of the business is focused on software quality, and that's our focus. In terms of a niche, we focus on implementing continuous testing and shift left to bring value to our clients. Our niche is basically we can turn testing into an asset by turning it into a risk mitigation practice for business.
Okay. You mentioned shift left. I'm sure there are one or two people on the call who may not know what that means. We'll come to that during the course of today. But also there is a series of these types of calls and discussions that are planned, which will delve into the world of testing and DevOps and DevSecOps. Okay, so with that, Donovan, why are we here today? Tell us a little bit about the state of e-commerce.
Yeah, we're here today to discuss the impact of inadequate software quality in the e-commerce world. That's so. As an example, if you do inadequate performance testing, you could have significant page load speed, resulting in quite a number of your potential sales, or quite a number of your carts being abandoned, or maybe people don't even get to the carts. The page loading so slow, they just abandon the site, and then they don't return. And 80% of those who experience that issue never return. They go to your competitor. Yeah. So really, we're here to discuss how can we use software testing, automated testing, continuous testing, shift left, in order to ensure that your page load speed, make sure is there.
So I find this quite staggering. I mean, this is one of the studies here saying that 70% of shoppers won't complete a transaction. Now, of course, that's got to do with other factors. Maybe they're just browsing. Maybe they are they get distracted. It says mobile shoppers, 85% of them won't finish it. So people are definitely a lot more distracted on mobile devices. But what we're trying to position is that code or performance of the site shouldn't be the reason that it fails, right? As you can see, phenomenal value of abandoned shopping carts. What's it say? $4 trillion in future value. That's astounding. I'm surprised that some companies don't take it more seriously than they should. So why don't you tell us about something that that recently happened? I'm sure many of you will know about the hype around Prime drinks, but just give us a little bit of insight into what happened here.
Okay, so
what we think happened here.
What we think happened here. This is just my opinion, my personal opinion. What I think happened here, the online retailer, they weren't prepared for the amount of transactions or the volumes that the Prime product would generate. So they had what we now call a Prime event. The site crashed or wasn't available because of the volumes. So what does that tell us? From my professional opinion, it tells me that the infrastructure wasn't ready for this kind of event. That is unanticipated. The volumes were unanticipated. And besides being unanticipated, the infrastructure wasn't elastic enough or couldn't react fast enough to support the volumes. And with a basic, or not basic, but with a performance testing, we can ensure or verify whether or not environments can handle the load, can scale if it's elastic enough to meet unexpected load.
So normally there are seasonal products, right? There are peak areas within retail, within e-commerce, where you expect to get a lot more traffic to a website. A Black Friday, for example.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a seasonal holiday like Easter or Christmas time, or some other flash sale that might take place. We know that rugby tickets just went on sale, and I realized I forgot about it. But something like that would cause a lot of traffic to an e-commerce website. In this case, we're talking about a situation where it's unpredictable, or maybe it hasn't been properly planned for, but they are between those normal seasons that exist, right?
Yes.
Okay. So what we're saying is that you need to have some kind of method or procedure or framework in place to be ready for any of those types of Prime events.
Exactly. So what I'm getting at is that the infrastructure, the underlying infrastructure for that e-commerce solution wasn't elastic enough in order to scale, or it scaled but ran out of resources.
Okay.
And couldn't meet that load. So you can, through performance testing, you can verify whether sites or an e-commerce site in this situation can handle unexpected load.
Okay.
Right. And because they're using the cloud technology, or such as the elasticity of the cloud, you only pay for resources that you consume. Right. So so it's not a sunken cost. So in my opinion, e-commerce sites should be ready for these kind of events.
Okay, so we're talking about elasticity. So like you have an elastic band for anybody who's maybe less technically minded on the call. Like you have an elastic band, if it needs to go around this coffee cup, it needs to be expanded just slightly. But if it needs to wrap around the table, if it's strong enough, it needs to be stretched quite a bit more. So same kind of scalability that you have within infrastructure, cloud infrastructure, supporting e-commerce. Okay, perfect. Exactly. So give us a little bit of a breakdown, because obviously we're trying to unpack why Kinetic Skunk, as a niche testing and DevOps business, is focused on e-commerce. Tell us a little bit about the dev lifecycle. As we can see with some of these diagrams over here, what does that typically look like as an end-to-end flow, and where is it failing for the companies that are feeling the impact?
Okay, as an end-to-end flow, typically a larger e-commerce retailer would engage with a partner to either develop a new product or service, or to customize an existing product, such as Salesforce, right, to support them through some kind of transformation, right? And so those developers, they'll write code, etc. That code will go through some kind of production line, in this case a DevOps pipeline, right? And when that code is ready, or the services that it's supposed to support is ready, For formal testing, we'll land a version of the software or of the e-commerce site into a formal QA environment for what we call systems integration testing.
Okay.
Right. At that stage, this is where systems integration testing, we're verifying the user journeys, such as the user can access the site and search for goods, select goods, the number of goods, shift it to a cart, empty the cart, pay, etc. Right? Basic user journey. So and once all the user journeys that we're testing passes, the client will then make a go live decision.
Okay.
Right. Yes. So that's a typical
end-to-end flow. But those user journeys would be looking at what's happening on the front end of the website, right?
Exactly.
Where does testing, like we are talking about, play a role in just testing the performance of that, and maybe not necessarily on the front end?
Okay. So we'll have speaking from a recent experience, we'll have an SIT environment, system integration environment, and we'll have an NFT environment, non-functional testing environment. And there we will test the performance of the system.
Yeah.
And we'll performance test it below the UI. And for page load speed, we'll obviously run that through the UI.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So I'm sort of foreseeing that for somebody who manages e-commerce or online retail, they would want to see what's happening with shoppers at the time, real time. So, for example, what's the average basket size? How many people on the site? Where are they busy? What's sitting in baskets? But at the same time, we have the ability to show them the reliability of the website.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. So where are things likely to fail? And we're talking about then shifting into testing being automated so that you don't have to manually test it, and then shifting into testing being continuous so that you don't have to worry about launching it because it's always checking the integrity of the site behind the scenes.
Exactly.
Okay. So looking at this selection, this end-to-end process, what's the worst case for e-commerce sites that are the most manual out there? Where are they? What are they doing, and where have they completely stopped? What's the worst case that you've witnessed?
The worst case that I've witnessed, it's a
without mentioning the names.
Without mentioning, I won't mention any names. Right. Sometimes the development team or the team that's doing the development, they tend to maybe not shoulder their part of the software quality requirement. Right, so they don't do enough testing, not enough unit tests, etc.
Okay.
And then they land a build into a formal test environment, only for a large part of it to be not testable, limiting the positive potential positive impact that the formal QA team can have because it's not testable.
Okay.
There are bugs in the SIT environment. And this obviously incurs expenses, drives up the cost because now you have the dev team has to spend more time fixing these bugs, right? While your QA team could be sitting idle.
Yeah.
Obviously, they can be developing new tests, improving current things, but they're actually not testing at that very moment.
Okay.
Right, and that delays going into production.
I saw somewhere that the cost of fixing a defect grows, let's say 10x at each phase. Yes. So if you find a defect during the development or code quality checking, that's the cheapest, right? If you find a defect a bit later when you're looking at the integration testing, that's a bit more expensive. If you find a defect as it goes into a staging environment, that's more expensive. And obviously in production, your ideal situation would be that you can easily roll back to the previous stable configuration or instance of the website while you're working on it, right? But naturally, that would be the most cost effective because suddenly the website's down, you can't do business as we had in that prime event example. Okay, with that, I'm going to see if anybody wants to ask a question. Please use the Q&A or the chat box on the call. So, how does somebody get started? I will assume that there are some teams out there running e-commerce sites that are more mature. There's some that are less mature. There may be one or two that are trying to do it themselves. out with an outsourced partner. How do they know where to start? Is there some kind of maturity model, or is there some kind of assessment that actually helps them to figure out where to start?
Well, if they want to start, let's say, with Kinetic Skunk, what we do is we first do an assessment. So as an example, the client comes and says, hey, we want automated testing. And then, but automated testing is a result of a certain maturity existing in the business already in your software delivery pipeline.
Okay, so tell me a bit more about that. What does that mean? What would need to be mature before you get to automated testing?
Well, first of all, as a basic example, there'd have to be tests to automate.
Documented tests.
Documented tests, codified tests that are repeatable.
Yep.
Right, that we can automate, because you don't want to spend a lot of time automating tests that change all the time, because what you're doing, you're refactoring tests, but you're not testing.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what the assessment, we have to find out where in the maturity levels the client is before making any call.
Okay. And for those that are slightly more mature, is there a different starting point? Can you start at any?
There are clients who have significant manual testing practices, which are very mature.
Okay.
But now they want to be able to test quicker to get new releases out more quickly, right?
Okay.
So we could come in there and do an assessment, recommend some tools based on some tools selection criteria, and then start to automate those tests.
Okay.
Normally, we would treat that as a separate project to any development that's happening, because we need to catch up.
Okay. Yeah. So in that case, you're talking about manual testing that might take a month, 2 months, 3 months of actual per people time, or lead time, or both, and then replacing some of that with automated, quicker testing that could be done more frequently as well.
Exactly.
Okay. I think a key thing there as well is that it's not just about trying to automate the role of humans within the workplace, but I think that once you find a smart way for people to work with the technology, then it can elevate the roles that they fulfill to something that's more value add. So they're not fighting fires and not trying to resolve something that's broken. Instead, they're focusing on something a bit more strategic.
And to that point, where what automated testing brings to the table, it enables your SME level QAs, quality assurance engineers, to focus on building better tests.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to automate a test that changes all the time. Right. So to your point, it enables the testing practice to mature.
Perfect. Okay. So to those on the call with us today, that's it, short and sweet. We're talking about the role of performance testing, continuous testing, automated testing in site reliability for e-commerce. We've all experienced sites going down and apps crashing at one point or another. And in our opinion, testing for Black Friday should start now. So it's never too early to do that. So I'll see if there are any questions that have come up from the audience. Okay, so we've got one that's come through, actually very similar to what we had just mentioned. I'm working in a small team. We don't really have the competency or skills to do this ourselves. Help. How do we start?
When we start, if we want to start with Kinetic Skunk, as discussed earlier or mentioned earlier, we first have to do an assessment to make sure that you are ready for automated testing. If not, generally we then help the client to become ready, because there are certain success criteria that need to be in place for automated testing to be a success. Because automated testing on its own is not a silver bullet.
Yeah.
Right? If you're automating a test, you're automating a reliable test that you can rerun to verify that there's no regression in the system if you had implemented a bug fix and there's a new version, etc. Right? That's where automated testing comes into itself.
Okay. You just check the other channel for questions. Okay. One point of clarification. Are we talking about a methodology or are we talking about a tool?
We're talking about methodology supported by a tool.
Okay.
So methodology comes into place where you look at test design. As an example, you can design different types of tests to expose different classes of defects at different stages of the software development lifecycle. And that is completely well, mutually exclusive to the technology, even to the automated tests or the automation of those tests.
Okay.
Right. So yeah.
Okay. And if you are interested in tools, one of our follow-up sessions will focus on one of the DevOps all-in-one platforms that we'll be looking at.
Yes, we'll be looking at one of the single app DevOps platforms, and also how our automated testing solution, we'll just call it software quality solution, fits into the DevOps environment or the DevOps theme.
Okay. There's another question that's come up, Donovan. Is there a point of cost to scale that has diminished returns? For example, Fly Sapphire creates a waiting room rather than creating unlimited scale for their site. So you're putting someone into a holding space until it's your turn to then go onto the site. Is there a point of cost to scale that has diminished returns? I assume that the retailer missed this, but the same could be true. What are your thoughts on that topic?
So if I'm understanding that question, someone wants to buy something, they come to the site, they want to buy, they want to pay for it. There's a lower volume is high. Then they put into a queue to wait in order to pay.
Yeah. Or potentially they get put into a queue to wait to go onto the site to actually interact with the online store.
Okay, so in the Black Friday context, that could work because people plan what they're going to buy.
Okay.
And the specific sites that have what they want, they are maybe they are willing to wait because they're getting that feedback. They've been told you are in a queue.
Yes.
Right? If they're not getting the feedback, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Right? They will abandon. However, if it's not a Black Friday event, maybe it's a Prime event.
So right? An unexpected peak
unexpected
event,
peak. Right? If they were put into a queue and were told that you're going to wait 15 minutes before you pay, maybe the site wouldn't have crashed. But if it's none of those events, right, and there's no queue behind it, or they're not being informed they're in the queue, they're going to leave. If it's none of those events where there's a desired good or product that's been sold, even if they're told they're in the queue, they're going to leave and go to your competitor where there's no queue.
Yes, yes.
Right? So it's, I think it's got to do with the desirability of the product or service that's being sold, and are they willing to wait, and getting the positive feedback that hey, you're in the queue. Super important.
Okay, so some form of acknowledgement is better than nothing, because if people don't, I think one of the statistics we came across was 3 seconds. If they have to wait longer than 3 seconds for page load, they're probably going to go somewhere else. So in a case like that, I would argue that we would need to understand what the shoppers would prefer. So would they prefer to go into a holding pattern and know that they've got a ticket? Or would you prefer to have infinite scale that maybe comes with rising cost to scale? I think that there's a bit of cost benefit analysis that needs to take place there as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's another question, and maybe this talks to test maturity or talks to some aspects within that methodology. Maybe you can touch on, positive cases and so on. There's a question: if you pick up issues in the automated testing, how would you go ahead with fixing these issues?
Okay, so when you are running an automated test, right, and it's a failure, you got there's several points where the test could be wrong. The actual test itself could just be out of date and needs to be refactored or a new version, right? That's fine. The automated test itself, the code supporting that test, there could be a bug in there, right? So you need to assess that. Then you also have to look at the data, the use, or what data you're using for that, and test how that data actually support the use case that you that you're testing, right? So there's 3 or 4 areas where it could fail, right? So you need to treat your automated test the same way you would treat production code. The automated test, it is code. You have to apply standard software engineering principles. So once an automated test is accepted as working, it goes into a let's call it into a main branch, and your main branch is a branch of accepted tests that when you run these tests, you're getting the reliable results. Right? So if the test fails, you have to go look at those areas first. How do you know whether it's data, whether it's the front end, whether there's some synchronization with the system under test, etc.? How do you know whether that is? Well, in your testing solution, you need to have adequate feedback. Login, you apply some kind of login technology to give you the log messages that you can go and read to determine whether what the failure is. Right? So make no mistake, automated testing is a proper software engineering undertaking. If you did anything less than that, you're going to fail.
For those logs, some of them could be easy to read and others may be a bit more complex, right, to understand. Is it possible to then aggregate those into some custom dashboard?
No, absolutely. You can aggregate it into a custom dashboard. Most of the login frameworks these days support aggregating logs, writing certain logs to certain sources to visualize on dashboards. So you can make architectural decisions about what log messages goes into a dashboard. Maybe those log messages are purely about functional aspects of the application. And in your test engineer, they get to look at all the other more in-depth type of technical logs, like stack traces.
Okay. To those on the call, we can chat about this for hours. Actually, this week we have. Any last questions? I'll just give it another few seconds while we're chatting about something, and then we'll look at closing the call. Donovan, last one from me. We talked during the week about positive test cases. What does that mean, and what might be the loopholes or gaps that people have missed?
Okay, so the positive test cases is sort of the utopian path through an application. Everything works. You're not expecting anything to go wrong.
From go to the website to check out and pay.
Exactly, right? So that's the positive path. But you also need to test for negative, we call it negative testing. Right? So can the user input standard alphabetic characters where there's a date field? Right? And does it, if that happens, what underlying problems are identified? So I can stop a user from doing that. Does a product that's out of stock, is it still on your website, right? Or so does it inform the customer about what's happening there? Other negative type of scenarios is does the cart, can you update it to a negative number in terms of the number of products, the product number? Can it go to
-2 items in cart?
-2 items.
And getting paid to shop.
Yes. And just recently, we actually heard of well, it's not a customer, but just a story, right? It could be hearsay that an e-commerce retailer didn't do testing and the quantities was to the power of 50.
Wow. Okay.
So obviously not working out.
Okay, good. From our side, that's it. Thank you so much to those who joined us live. This session has been recorded and will be shared as well. Please do look out for follow-up events. We will go into a bit more around the end-to-end test cycle, talk a bit about strategy, talk a bit about tools, talk a bit about framework and methodology, and where you can have some quick wins, but also some big picture changes within your testing landscape. If you do want to have a one-on-one follow-up, reach out at hello@kineticskunk.com or find us on LinkedIn. You can follow that for more information about posts, the follow-up to this, and future events. Okay. Donovan, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.